Welcome to the Pursuit of Wellbeing. My name's Maria Brosnan. I'm the founder of Pursuit and your host for the show. We're dedicated to providing wellbeing information, inspiration and support for teachers, leaders and school staff around the world. My guest today is Kathryn Grice. Kathryn was a secondary English teacher for 10 years and head of department. She left full-time teaching in 2016 and now runs the Teacher Empowerment Project, which she founded. She's the co-owner of the Grow Tuition Centre that works with both private students and schools. So thankfully she can still teach. And she spends most of her time looking after her two young sons. She recently began working with migrant leaders, providing world-class mentoring and work experience for migrant and pupil premium post-16 students. And she's also on the board of advisors for Let's Localise and the board of trustees, and a passionate advocate for the Coaldale and Kirklees Women's Centre. Kathryn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
Well, it sounds like you're a very busy woman.
Yeah, I guess I am, you know. It's when you list it all like that, I think, gosh, I do spin a lot of plates, really.
You do. And I think throwing in, well, not throwing in, of course, but, you know, two little boys in the mix there makes for a busy life.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Thanks for your time.
It's the best bit.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, Kathryn, let's start at the beginning. And can you talk us through your career and why you left teaching full-time when you did?
So what I would say was I love teaching, absolutely love it. And when I left university, I was a bit unsure what else I could possibly do. And whenever I looked at jobs, I always wanted to work with children. I always wanted to teach. And I just thought, God, what a privilege it would be to work with students and get to teach them English literature. I just thought it was going to be the best thing in the world. And it was the best thing in the world. I absolutely loved being a teacher. I was a cover supervisor to start with, and then an English teacher, and then a second in English, and then a head of department. And my career sort of went in an upward trajectory, but my workload increased and increased and increased, and my life started to shrink a little bit. I was teaching non-stop, thinking about students, thinking about data, and the bits outside of me as a teacher were getting smaller and smaller. And I was putting off having children, actually. I knew the one thing I did know, that I've always wanted to be a mum. And I found myself thinking, oh, after one more year as head of department, I'll have children, or maybe I should get on SLT and then I should have, and then it got to a point where I thought, God, that's insane. What am I doing? And yeah, I was doing, at the end of my time as a head of department, I was sort of doing 60-hour weeks. And that sort of sounded normal to me. That was absolutely fine. And then when I had my son, I realised, actually, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to be able to see the son that I've really, really wanted for such a long time. So I thought, yeah, I'm gonna step out for a little bit and have a break. And then my second son came along, and yeah, the rest is history. And here I am, still out, which I didn't expect, really. Yeah.
Are you planning to go back to teaching?
I would love it. I do dream about it every now and again. I just don't know, with all the plates I'm spinning at the moment. Well, I guess I still do teach students. I still teach literature to GCSE students, and now we're working with schools with the tuition centre. I am getting more of a flavour of being back in the classroom in a bit of a bigger way, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I hope, I can't imagine never teaching a class of 30 students again. So I do hope at some point I will get to do that. But yeah, priority one at the moment is my my two young sons.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you founded the Teacher Empowerment Project. Tell us what that is for starters, and then talk us through your thinking behind it and what the Teacher Empowerment Project actually does.
So the Teacher Empowerment Project it exists to give teachers an ego boost. So when I left the profession, I felt I'd gone from earning quite a lot of money. People really wanted to work with me and, responded to me as a teacher and responded to me as a professional. And then when I stepped out, I felt so lost and so alone, and a little bit pushed out by the profession. But it was in my head a little bit, but also it got me thinking, what happens to all these teachers? I hadn't gone off for anxiety and depression, but I do suffer from anxiety and depression. And I thought, God, if I had gone off for mental health reasons, I'm sure I would feel even more of a failure than I do right now. And equally, you know, there are people that are made redundant, and there are people that need to leave the profession. And it made me start thinking about people on maternity leave as well. This whole tranche, if you will, of teachers that leave the profession or consider leaving or step out of it for a little while are left feeling they're left feeling disempowered, to be honest with you. That's how I really felt. And I knew so many of my friends had either been through that or were going through that situation. And we can't deny really that we do have a retention problem in teaching. So many teachers leave when they get to my age, which was, you know, I was 30 when I had my first son. 30 to 40, we lose a lot of staff members, a lot of teachers leave the profession. And I wanted to create a space that supported those members of staff and supported those professionals to say, basically, to give them an ego boost and to make them realise that they are valuable. They've got amazing skills, and they shouldn't feel that way. They should feel empowered, not disempowered. So I created the first event. So Teacher Empowerment, it was about face-to-face events, really, to make people who were feeling a little bit lost or a little bit pushed out, or whether they should leave the profession, to come to a space where they could realise that they're valuable, they're worthwhile, and there'd be people there who were wanting to work with them. So whether it's different sectors, my main sponsors, Novus, they deal in prison education. There was social work people there interested in recruiting teachers. There was different sectors. The Chartered College of Teaching were there in the Manchester one. So it was like an idea to sort of think about CPD, different careers, well-being, and ways to empower your students. So it was held in the People's History Museum in Manchester. And it was face-to-face, sort of transactional analysis, all about talking to each other and sharing experience, maybe receiving coaching, going to workshops, and leaving that day feeling empowered and feeling like, yeah, I am valuable. And what was brilliant for me after that first event, which was just a year ago, was the teachers who came, who were adamant that they were going to leave, ended up staying in the profession, getting promotions. Teachers who felt really disempowered ended up leaving their current context, moving somewhere else and finding their dream jobs in education. And some teachers did leave and are really happy now. And a lot of teachers signed up to work with Novus, which was brilliant. So yeah, it was great. And then we had the second event, which was in London. But obviously that was impacted with coronavirus. So it was on the 2nd of May. So we had to move everything online, and now we're all online. So yeah, Empowerment Online exists there, and it's free for people to view and look at different vlogs and different workshops and people who've been through the same experience. And yeah, it centres around the same things again: CPD, well-being, careers and income diversification, and ways to empower your students. So that's it in a very, very big nutshell.
It is a big nutshell. So many questions. Well, one of the words that really leapt out at me in that introduction, Kathryn, was the word failure. That you left teaching when you had your son because you didn't want to, or couldn't sustain that 60-hour week as a head of department in school, and you left feeling like a failure. That's
like a massive failure. Yeah, I really did. Yeah.
Is that common?
I think so.
You're finding
I think, I don't know whether this is just me and the schools I've worked in, but I sincerely doubt that. I've worked in quite a few schools. There is something, I don't know, there's a bit of a martyr narrative in teaching where, you work really hard and you're like, oh, I'm working harder than you. I'm doing 70-hour weeks. I'm doing 80. I've not seen my kid in 3 years. That kind of narrative. But alongside that is a bit more of a harmful one where people who put their hands up and say, do you know what, I am struggling and I don't know whether I want to carry on with this, or I think I do need some time off sick. They're not always greeted with the same positivity that I think if we took some time and space that we would probably, if you told me that you were struggling and that you wanted some time off, I'd really think about you as a person, and I'd want to make sure that you were okay. But when we're teaching, we're trying to get those year 11s through. We're trying to think about the kids. We're trying to, we're on this train that's going at 100 miles an hour, and then somebody's off sick. How dare they?
Yes.
And then somebody's left
Yes.
the profession. Are you kidding me? How dare she? She was a good teacher. What, and also when your careers and when your educational life has been, on a clear path and on a clear trajectory, that you've gone from your GCSEs to your A levels, your degree, you've gone from second in department to head of department. You're supposed to be on SLT. What are you doing leaving to look after your children? You big failure. And I did feel like that. Sorry, I just sniffed.
That's okay.
You're putting up with my cold really well. I'm grateful. So, yeah, I did feel like, and I do think as well, the people that came to the Teacher Empowerment Project, I recognise that in them. I recognise that they felt like they couldn't go on and that they were asking for change, but they were also frightened of what people would think. And I don't know, because you go into it for the right reasons. You want to help children and you want to be able to, you don't want to let anybody down. And you do feel like you're letting people down when you leave the profession or when you step away from it. Or it's difficult. It's difficult because you feel like you're letting your own children down if you stay, or you're letting the children down that you teach if you go. It's tough.
It is. Yeah. It is tough. And I think for working women, not to exclude men, of course, but for working mothers, there is a real push-pull of guilt. You just frequently, I've had this myself, you just don't feel like you're in the right place at the right time. When you're at school, you feel like you should be thinking about your kids. When you're at home, you should be doing some more work. And there's this awful sense of guilt that pervades everything that you do in the end. How do you step back from that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was the biggest thing for teacher empowerment. I wanted it to be. So a lot of people were saying to me, why don't you just put it on in a school? And it was really important for me that it was not in a school context and it wasn't institutionalized. It was somewhere that was a brilliant location that felt really good quality. So the People's History Museum, I couldn't think of a better location. And I wanted to give them time and space, because that is what I don't think we often give ourselves. We give the children that we teach an awful lot of time and space. We give the children that we, bring into the world a lot of time and space. But how much time and space do we actually give ourselves? And that was a huge learning curve for me, that I needed some time and space to think about what was it that would help me as a person? What makes me feel fulfilled, and what ticks my boxes, and what's going to help me be the best person that I can be, the best mum I can be, the best teacher I can be. And I really want to provide that time and space for other teachers, because I just think it's in such short supply. I mean, yourself, when you're teaching, and somebody says, why don't you go for a jog or a swim you feel like, are you kidding me? You're like, my marking is, past my ears, and you're telling me I should go for a run.
Yeah.
But actually, it's probably what you need. You need that time and space.
Exactly. Funny, I was just saw a tweet, a big long thread about that yesterday, and it feeds into the narrative, the martyr narrative that you mentioned. And I'm aware, I don't want to trigger anybody by saying this, but when things become overwhelming, that's the time where you really actually do need to do something. And before you burn out, before you're absolutely exhausted and overwhelmed, that's the time, that step before that happens. And I know.
Yeah, now I would say that, but I would also say the conditions have to be right for that to be able to happen. Yeah. Because I can say that teachers are martyrs, but actually not, a lot of them are in. When I was working 60-hour weeks, I wasn't doing that for the love of being a martyr. I actually had that much work to do. I actually had to. Yeah. And that's the tricky thing. I think that, as school leaders, we have to make sure that we're creating the right conditions for teachers not to fall into that martyr trap. They've got to be able to see you take those positive steps and encourage you to go on and do it as a teacher, and to make that time and space. And it's the conditions have got to be right for that. I think the context has got to be right, because if you're working in somewhere where they just keep piling the work on and not really valuing you as a person, it's going to be really difficult to find that time and space, I think.
And that leads neatly to the point that you talk about quite a lot, is flexible working.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, and what the options are, what the opportunities are, how that might look for people listening to this.
So I always say to the people at Flexible Teacher Talent, I think part of the reason that I do the teacher empowerment stuff is so that they have a bigger platform, and that they have, well, I want to basically say, look at what Flexible Teacher Talent are doing and suggesting, and do this, please, because we won't lose as many teachers. We'll have so many brilliant teachers staying in the profession. And I think so Flexible Teacher Talent, Lindsay talks on Empowerment Online. There's a video of her talking about various different things, and one of the things that she does is she interviews Raphael Moss from a primary school, and Raphael Moss was asked to interview his teachers. He'd put some flexible working measures in his school, and Vivian Porritt asked him from Women's Ed, she asked him to go back and just interview them about their experiences and what having flexible working meant to them. And he couldn't believe it. He said he was expecting, his teachers to say, oh yeah, that, it's helped me drop my kid off and it's been good. But actually what he found was a lot of his staff were saying, yeah, I would have left the profession had this not been available. And he was gobsmacked. And he talks about that on Empowerment Online. And it's really interesting listening to Lindsay interview him about that, because it goes to show, I mean, he's a man, I can't really speak for him, but I wonder, has he managed to navigate, you were saying about it happens to women an awful lot, this, and it is a higher percentage of women that leave the profession between 30 and 40 than it is men. And a lot of that is because we're facing that midlife struggle of looking after elderly parents, or, looking after young children. Rightly or wrongly, it falls on our shoulders. And I wonder from his point of view, whether or not he realised just how much that weighs on, female staff. Yeah. And male staff, it weighs on us both. But until you've lived that experience and you've considered leaving the profession, and I think it's such an important piece for leaders to look at, particularly if they're male and they're not. I always like to say to male, leaders, just think about who's behind the scenes helping you do what you're doing in your career. Why is it that you can just get up at 6 a.m. and come to work and work till whatever time you can? Who's holding the fort behind the scenes for you to be able to do that? Because a lot of the time it's people that are like me, that have just had the children and having to take steps out of their career. And imagine if you didn't have that, what would that look like for you? I think flexible working is such an important thing. And I think it's really a huge piece to answering our retention crisis.
Well, I think that it showed up. There was some very interesting research during lockdown and during the time of COVID, that the burden of picking up all of the childcare, all of the homeschooling, well, I say all, but the vast majority there, it was women that picked up their stuff and traditionally picked up all of those roles that were left. And I don't mean to be divisive. I don't mean to cast any blame onto anybody, but it's a consideration. And if we're looking at this huge number of teachers leaving the profession, we've got to be starting to ask why and what can we do to stop that, so we don't lose these incredibly talented people at this critical time in their life. And schools have invested a lot. These teachers and people have invested a lot in themselves and their career. So what do we do? And so tell me, Kathryn, what could flexible teaching even look like? Give me some ideas.
Well, there's so many things that came into my head when you were talking there. So there's lots of different things that it can look like. I mean, for me, just being able to pick up my sons a couple of times a week, or being able to drop them off, or being able to attend nursery, nursery performances, and they have a huge impact. I mean, I'm not the expert like Flexible Teacher Talent. I would definitely point them, you in their direction, because they've got so many different ways it works, and it, shines out of schools that do it, and they manage to retain so many people. But one thing that I wanted to say when you were saying that is, what is frustrating for me is to see teachers like myself who, the government have invested in my education. I've got brilliant CPD courses and records to my name, but then I had to sort of step out for my own well-being and for my own family's well-being. But then the men who were in my position, who haven't had to do that, they've still had children, they've families have still happened. They've managed to stay on that same course, and then they go on to be on SLT, or they go on to be head teachers, but they don't necessarily have that understanding of what it is to be in that position. And so that's what I really, something that I really want to highlight to some of those people that have managed to just carry on that plain sailing trajectory, going from head of department to SLT to head teacher. Think about how you've managed to get there, and who's helped you get there, and why maybe some of your really high performing females, why are they not there? And they were there in the 30s. Why are they not there now? We haven't got anywhere near as many female head teachers as we need. And I think that's a big piece to helping us get more flexible working, because they've lived the experience a lot of the time. A lot of these women have been through that experience, and they would be really helpful in making a change around flexible working, for sure. But I would say please look at Flexible Teacher Talent's work, because they're brilliant, and they've got so many different ideas of how it could work for you, how it could work for the school. A lot of people say timetabling, it's impossible, it's an idealistic dream, but it's not. It's working for so many different people across the piece. So please check out their work.
Yeah, it sounds like a great, a really sensible solution to this, because I would imagine that many women would like to keep working part-time. I remember when my daughter was small, I wasn't a teacher, but I was working, and I wanted to keep working a bit part-time. And I think that there's a great value to be had in looking at that really fully and taking that seriously. Yeah,
me too.
So on your website I read that you said the greatest success from the project has come from seeing teachers invest in themselves, recognize their worth, and choose more of the life that they wish to live. Teachers, the possibilities are endless. There are so many parts to that I'd really like to break down. So what do you mean when you say seeing teachers invest in themselves? So in what way?
So like we were saying previously, we give so much time to our the children we teach, the children that we raise, all the people we, as a profession, we're a giving profession. It's a vocation. We love giving. But a lot of the time we forget to invest in ourselves, and we forget to actually think, do you know what, some coaching might be useful for me here. Or it seems a bit, when you've got so much to do, it seems really indulgent to take time for yourself, to go for that run, to talk to a coach, to think about some CPD, to think about something outside of teaching that is just for you. And I found that when I left the profession, my life expanded, because I could fit in all the bits that I'd been shrinking down to non-existent. I could see my friends again. I could volunteer at the Women's Centre as a board member, which it brought me back to life, that did. And it's something, something really straightforward as volunteering. I still get to help. And it just really brought me back to life. It made me think, gosh, I'm doing something here for me that I love doing. And it felt really indulgent to do that in a way. I'm going to be honest with you. It felt really like such an indulgent thing to do, is to take time away from my children, not be teaching, and, supporting at the Women's Centre. I loved it.
Isn't that interesting that feels indulgent? I'll leave that there, because we could talk about these. We could go down rabbit holes with every one of these, but I want to pick up the next point, which is how do we help teachers recognize their worth? And that's something I hear so much, that teachers feel undervalued, underappreciated. They don't feel the worth or value from other people. How do they find that in themselves even?
So one of the things, the most straightforward thing that I wanted to do for the Teacher Empowerment Project was put teachers in front of people that are outside of the industry and go, look, these people want to work with you, not for minimum wage. They want to work with you for your talent, and listen to them talk about the amazing experiences that they've had recruiting ex-teachers. I mean, Did Teach, her whole industry is based around recruiting ex-teachers into industry, and it's very successful because we're so passionate, we're so creative, we're so resilient. People love working with us. So from a straightforward point of view, that's what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to see that people think you're amazing, but then I guess realizing it in themselves. So part of I think a lot of the times, and I know I've said this to you before, as a teacher, we're almost like, we work really, really hard and we're just dying for somebody to go, no, you know, like we're almost going, notice me, notice me. Head teacher, look what I've done. Aren't I brilliant? And there's a bit of actually going, do you know what? I've done that for myself. I've done that for my children. I don't need your thanks or praise, or, you know, this is for me and for my career and for who I am as a person, whether it's teaching or whether it's your life outside of teaching. Investing in yourself, I guess, I think it's so important, and something I didn't do at all when I was a teacher, which is interesting.
Yeah. And your final point is, how do you choose more of the life you wish to live? And you describe that, and I think I couldn't agree more that we need to choose these things. And of course, I know it's hard. I know, especially now that our lives are packed and teachers' lives are completely packed. How do we carve out that little bit of time? And I think we both work with the Teacher 5 a Day principles. I teach them in my online course. You work with them. Tell our listeners more about Teacher 5 a Day, what they are, and how we can use that as a framework to help our well-being.
So Martin Rea has introduced me to the Teacher 5 a Day principles, and that's why we know each other, isn't it? So his hashtag Teacher 5 a Day, and it's based on the New Economics Foundation research. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm looking to you to make sure I'm getting it right. And the 5 are, and this is where I'll probably need your help. So connect, notice, volunteer, exercise, and learn.
Yeah, well done. Good.
Yeah, and it's just about bringing those aspects to your life, I guess, making sure that you're taking, I mean, volunteering for me was brilliant, making sure I'm learning, making sure I'm noticing my own habits. And I think a bit around the noticing piece, around choosing the life that you wish to live. Notice what makes you happy, even if it's the smallest things, like the tiniest little things changed my life. So I just had in my head that I wanted to be able to go for a coffee when I wanted to go for a coffee, and I wanted to walk through a town with a coffee in my hand. And it sounds ridiculous, but that one thing has made me realize, actually, it wasn't about the coffee. It was about the autonomy. It was about the freedom. It was about stepping away from the institution for a little bit. And then I do that in my week, and it brings me so much joy, that tiny little thing. And I think just stepping in tiny choices to that bigger picture of what are you creating? Because that's what you're doing with your life. You're creating the life that you want to live. And are you taking tiny steps to the one that you want to live? Or do you feel like you've been walked down a path that you don't necessarily want to be on?
Yeah, completely agree. I think the principles of the work I do is, principle number 1 is our well-being is made up of our small everyday choices. And it's not the holiday in the Bahamas. It's not the, it's not the escaping from our life. Our life is our life. And if it's busy and packed, and what are the tiny little choices we can make every day? And getting a coffee, or, there's small choices we can make every day that make us happy and bring us joy. And they don't have to be big, time-consuming, expensive things. In fact, they're rarely those things.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're finding with your boys, just spending time with them, playing with them, reading with them,
Duplo, Lego, wooden train track. That time is just amazing.
Precious.
And it's so precious. It's brilliant. Yeah, tiny little choices really do lead you towards that bigger, more of the life you wish to live, for sure.
Yeah. And the final part in that sentence, teachers, the possibilities are endless. So what would you say to somebody who's listening to this saying, I don't know that I can keep going this way, I'm thinking of leaving? What would you say to that person?
I'd say you're not wrong for feeling this way. If you feel this way, don't make yourself wrong for feeling like that. Explore what it is that you're not comfortable with right now. It might be the setting. It might be, I'd really get them to take some time and some space with what is it, like really analyze what it is about your day and about, and interesting things come out from that. Because again, the tiny little pieces that come out. I was listening to somebody tell me the other day that they really want to be able to walk their dog. And again, it's not just about the walking the dog aspect. It's about, looking after themselves, the well-being, the autonomy, the freedom. And so from those tiny little bits of your day that you dislike, think about what it is, how you could make changes. And you're not powerless in any way, shape or form in this. I'd say that you've got way more power and way more choice than you think you do. And that's the whole empowerment in a nutshell, really. You've got so much potential. The possibilities are endless. A lot of people, I mean, when you Google, what can I leave after teaching? What can I do after I've left teaching? Ignore that. It's an algorithm. It's rubbish. You know, a lot of the time it says you could be a, tutor, and that's it. And you could do, it's not true. You could do whatever you want to do. And that might even be staying in teaching, which a lot of the people that come to empowerment stuff find. They think they need to leave teaching, and they realize, actually, no, it might just be a different sector, or it might just be just tiny changes within where they currently are. Having that difficult conversation with a staff member a lot of the time, managing upwards, a lot of the time it's that. When I talk to people, they just don't, they've come to a place where they feel like they have to leave because they don't want to have that difficult conversation to say to their line manager or their SLT, listen, this is making me feel like this.
Gosh, that's a whole other episode. I do difficult conversation. I do leadership training in schools, and that's probably one of the hardest conversations to have, is an upward conversation, because it's a tough thing to do. We're not trained to do that. We don't know how to talk to somebody above us, in the traditional sense of that. How do we even have those conversations? And that requires skill and requires courage to say, this isn't working, or this, I'm struggling here, or something is wrong, whatever, to have those difficult conversations upwards.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm proud of actually on Empowerment Online is that Andy Buck has shared some of his difficult conversation training. It's the same difficult conversation training that I used when I came to a really tough point at school with my head teacher, and I felt so grateful to him for putting it on there, because they can just go on and have a little look at it and use that script. It sort of shows the tools of how to do that. So yeah, if anybody's feeling like that out there, please go and have a look at that and see if you can apply it to your situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill to learn. And my friend Sonia Gill has a great book, Successful Difficult Conversations in Schools. It's brilliant. So I'd recommend that as well. There are resources to help build up your skills in these areas, and it's really a huge skill to have. One final thing you wanted to mention about the Teacher 5-a-day week on the 30th of November. What's happening there?
Lots and lots of things. So it's going to be hosted off the Teacher Empowerment Project website. So that's teacherempowermentproject.co.uk. There's going to be a whole Teacher 5-a-day takeover. So there'll be a page dedicated to Teacher 5-a-day. There's also going to be resources on Empowerment Online, which is all free to view, for lots of different wellbeing, so much different content. There's going to be live streams, webinars, lots going on in that week, and it's going to be based around the 5 principles of notice, learn, connect, exercise and volunteer. So lots of well-being, and it's very much needed at the moment, isn't it? We need to look after our teachers for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to speak with you.
Thank you for putting up with my cold as well. I'm a little bit, I don't normally sound this nasal.
It's totally fine. Thank you for your time. I've been speaking with Kathryn Grice. You can connect with Kathryn on Twitter at Teacher Empower, on Facebook, again at Teacher Empower, on Instagram, teacher_empowerment_project. This is all on the show notes, so don't feel like you need to memorize this if you're driving home. Think, oh, no. Her website is teacherempowermentproject.co.uk. Kathryn, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Check out our website, pursuitwellbeing.com, for information about our 5-step wellbeing action plan for teachers and school leaders. There's a link in the description below. I'd love you to connect with me on Twitter at Maria Brosnan. And if you enjoyed the show, please hit the subscribe button. If you feel inspired, give us a thumbs up, comment, and share it with your friends.